Hey, we are live. Happy Father's Day to all the wonderful fathers out there loving on their children, even if they are already adults and old, all the way to the newborns. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And even those who have little pets. So, your fathers too, to your babies, your pet babies. Definitely, I want to say I am so happy to be here with you guys because I was so sick after my birthday, and I was praying, God willing, that I would be able to communicate with you guys and be with my co-host Ty and my special guest Kashim. I'll introduce him in a second. Ty, do you have anything to say? Bless us with some words of wisdom initially.
Thank you. I just want to say happy Father's Day again to all the fathers out there. Kashim, thank you again for coming on. We appreciate you for being an unfiltered dad and being a king. Thank you. Guys, we're on here again. You could also go to our YouTube channel, Mothers Unfiltered, and subscribe. And that's pretty much it. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I did call you, but happy Father's Day, Eddie Valentine.
My uncle, I love you.
Love you.
So let me go jump right in. So let me introduce everybody to our guest that we have today, Kashim. Kashim is an Army vet, also holds his MBA, has 3 wonderful children, and is happily married to me.
Wait.
Right? Okay. But I want
you get to say that, or does he get to say that?
He doesn't get to say anything. No, I wanted to bring you on, Cash, because you happen to be a father, a Black male, but in a situation that you're a stepdad and you also have a biological child as well. And that right there is a puzzle piece within itself. A lot of times people think it's very easy to be a father, and it's very, very hard. And I wanted to get your perspective. I wanted for you maybe to hopefully be that voice to, representing the fellas, and their viewpoint. So I could just dive in and get some questions going. I wanted this day, this special edition episode to be about the beauty of fatherhood, but talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there are some aspects that people don't want to talk about. I don't want to harp too much on it. Ty, pull me back in if we're going that way.
You already know. Again, we want to highlight all the good the dads do, because today is a very special day. So I'm gonna make sure I keep it like
yes, a little bit of the other stuff. But with that said, we can start off with you, Cash, just to ask, what do you think the fundamentals are for being a dad or a father, or is there a difference? I know a lot of times you might see the little Facebook memes, and then a dad is somebody, a father is somebody who conceived the child, but I guess a dad is somebody who raised the kids. They have all different little things. But what do you think that fundamental is to say, what, this is what it takes to be a father?
Well, I think I would agree with that sentiment. That's very widely held. Fathers and dads, a father, anybody can, have a child. Dads actually, first and foremost, are there, are present, right? So when you talk about good parenting, being a good dad, that's the first thing. Is showing up every day, right? If you do that, that's like 75% of the job. Just being there, showing up every day. Yeah. And, ready to tackle whatever, the day happens to throw at you and the family, So that's my perspective on that.
Okay. Now, I know, just to share a little bit with our audience, you met me, and we didn't have our last child together, our baby, but you met me and I already had 2 kids. And my daughter was 4 and my son was 5 at the time. Very curious on how you felt when you were entering the relationship as to, man, I'm overwhelmed. Like, okay, I meet a girl, man, I like her. She has these things going on or whatever, but wow, I gotta grab onto these other ones here. And how did you deal with that baby mama drama and all that? Because that could actually break up a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
It could definitely be like, I'm out of here. It's too much. How did you personally, handle on to that?
Yeah, it could be difficult just getting two people on the same page, right? And then when you throw in these different layers of complexity, children, other co-parents, even their families, all of these different things add different layers of complexity. Um, Now, when we first started dating, um, at that time, I was a junior in college. I went to the military, came home to New York, came to Florida to start college. And at the time we met, I was in my junior year. So I wasn't per se even really probably looking for a serious relationship at the time. Me, uh, you know, cognizantly thinking like, okay, I'm trying to get into a relationship, let alone a relationship, that involved children. But I think what we did originally was just kind of enjoying each other's company, right? That's where it starts. And if you do that, and we continue to just be there for each other and come around more and more, and learn about each other, our wants, our desires, everything like that. Of course, I had, at that age, I might have been maybe 26, if that. I had all kinds of ideas in my mind about how my life was going to go, right? That's one thing I've always believed in is not just reacting to things, not just kind of floating through life, but being proactive, having a roadmap, having an understanding in your mind what it is that you do and don't want for your life for any particular period of time. Do I want children right now? If I'm not wanting children right now, then I should be using protection. I should have proactive, affirmative, uh, preventative in place, some sort of plan or whatever to make sure that that isn't the case. But ultimately, um, it just came to a point where we bonded so well, and I just felt like making that commitment was something that I wanted to do more than the alternatives, right? And that's ultimately what it takes. If there are other things that you want or that you desire or other lifestyles or whatever above and beyond, being a parent or, being in a committed relationship, then, that takes precedence.
Would you say that a lot of times in these relationships, people bite off more than they can chew? So it's like, okay, we're in the thick of it, we're loving each other, yay, yay, yay. And then it's like, in your mind, you're like, I'm not ready for kids. But then in the heat of the moment, you're like, it'll work out. Like, do you think we commit to more than what we're truly wanting to do?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes people may just want to be nice. They may just want to say what you want to hear. They may, some people just, will say anything for sex, right? Like,
Right.
okay, I'll tell her whatever. I know that she's actively looking for someone to mate up with, to be serious with, or whatever. So if I just tell her what I think that she wants to hear, then I'll be able to get what it is that I want, and leave whenever it is that I feel like it's getting too hot and too heavy. But also on the other end, as far as women go, I think women have a responsibility to understand or know or assess the person that they're dealing with. Is this mate potential? Is this somebody that's they're qualified for that title as a potential mate? Everybody shouldn't be.
We know that. Not everybody knows that.
Just being honest. Sometimes people waste their own time. If you know that the guy, shows every indication of just loving to hang out at the clubs. He's at the club Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Right.
Friday and Saturday.
Right.
With the COVID.
I can't stand you. Well, okay.
You know the club though.
But wait. Off subject, but on subject. For you coming in a relationship where someone already had kids, were you nervous? Was it hard to adjust trying to be a parent, and I, of course, I have to ask because I don't know the relationship, the history with you two. So, I have to. So I don't know if there was issues with the other father. How did you handle that? Again, like knowing that these are things that people go through in relationships when it comes to already made families that had pretty much been separated, and a great man like yourself coming in and taking on that responsibility. What are some of the good things that happened, some of the obstacles you went through?
No, there was definitely, I was scared to death. There was apprehension. We, broke up a few times. It wasn't, just an easy, rope, because ultimately, like I said, I'm 25, 26 years old. I'm a junior in college. I don't have a career or whatever going at the time. And we want to put this in context of Blackness in America, right? We don't have a lot of jobs, a lot of income, a lot of this stuff. My family, particularly where I come from, Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, everybody was poor. Not that many people really had jobs and things like that. So that was really my foremost priority. And so when we started dealing with each other, my concern and what it was, once I knew that I liked her and then knew that I loved her and all of those things, but being such a logical thinking person, I'm like, well, I still need to know that you are going to be somebody that, look, if I'm going to commit and I'm going to, jump in this foxhole and start fighting, I can't promise any outcomes, and I'm not asking you to promise any outcomes other than the fact that you're going to jump in this foxhole with me and you're going to fight as hard as you can, as well, for the good of us as well as these children. And as long as I feel comfortable that you're willing to do that, I would say this: the day that I felt that was the day that I proposed to her.
Wow! Oh, that's so special.
That was really the only thing.
It's interesting looking on the outside, looking in, because of course he has his own viewpoints and he has his own ideologies. And for myself, when I'm observing and I'm looking, I'm like, wow, here's a man, and just overall his characteristics are so exemplary that I'm like, wow, he'd be a great father. Now this time I'm single and I broke up with my baby father, and he's the complete opposite. And I'm like, wow, who is this person? I have to know this guy. With that being said, like he said, there were a lot of hurdles in reference to the baby father issue, because for my end, it's kind of like you have a situation maybe like where a baby mother would be in. No one be around my kids. Who's this stranger, trying to say this? I have it this way, and this is the way that I normally teach these kids. But now this new guy comes in and says the opposite. Maybe I said your bedtime is at 10, but he comes in and says you guys got to go to bed at 8:30. I wish somebody would. I mean, like I said, it's always that back and forth, even if it was a baby mother versus a baby father.
But did you guys have that within the relationship, like where the your first baby father, where he had set rules or boundaries or whatever, and you being in the household, you had to run the household like you have to run your household, right? Did you guys have issues like that?
No, absolutely not. And I talked to him from the beginning. Probably after a few weeks, maybe even a few months. It wasn't very long or whatever. But my whole thing going in was that I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't impede him being able to have a relationship with the children. And for me, that was the what was most paramount, is that they feel and he feel. I didn't want him to feel. Look, that could be a very uncomfortable thing. You coming over to the house to see your children while another guy is there,
Right.
But
right.
how and what can I do, to try to make this you know, as cohesive and everything as possible so that he feels, you know, and, you know, my conversation with him, you know, and really me with all people is if we have respect, then we can have anything, right?
Right.
We can do whatever from there. As long as we, you know, have a good line of respect or whatever, then anything's possible. If we don't have any respect, then nothing's possible.
Right.
You know?
And then, so how does that work with the kids too? Like knowing that you're not the biological father, but you've been there. How does that look when it comes to that respect and discipline and support on both ends, from you to the kids and the kids to you?
Well, there were large periods where he wouldn't be there or whatever. So it wasn't that sort of situation, right? It wasn't like, okay, you know, this other person is living right up the block and he's over at the house, you know, 3 times a week or whatever. And it's, you know, no, it was see someone today, then maybe 6 months, you know, so it was very, you know, more stretched out. So that's a different situation than probably someone who is dealing with someone who's a lot more active and they're like that, especially in the beginning. I think that did make a bit of a difference. The fact that there was that space and room for, you know, me and the kids really just kind of, you know, did our thing one-on-one.
Right.
I set the rules or whatever. They understood, you know, me and also their mother that, you know, this was our household and this is, you know, how things were going to work or whatever. But it was never, I've heard things like where children try to be manipulative and they'll go to their birth father and they'll say certain things. And, you know, it was never like that. And also, you know, communication again, you know, like I said, I speak to him directly. Me and him have a talking relationship, so it would be difficult for them to, you know, go to him and tell him something and me not get wind of it, you know, because that can happen if the parents aren't communicating. Then the children could just go tell one parent one thing and he's over there sitting and thinking it's one thing.
Right.
And never really getting my side of it or what the truth actually is or whatever.
Let me ask you this, and the reason why I'm going to ask you this question, because it didn't pertain to you, but I do know of parents, let's just say they're the baby moms or they're the stepmoms or they're the stepdads, whatever dynamic they're in, they deal with it. What happens if you are open for that communication? Like you're ready to be civil, you're ready to have that adult conversation, you want what's best for the kids, but that other person is in their little own feelings, because of course you didn't experience it. You guys had that open dialogue. Everybody knew where everybody stood, and then we can move from there. But how would you approach that? Did you ever consider, if that was the case, how does one approach a situation where, you know, I'm walking in, I want to have that conversation, and the person is not listening, and how can we, you know, do it right?
Well, I always like to assume the best in people, right? Especially when I'm going into a conversation. If you go into the conversation with, you know, negative expectations and, you know, that negative energy, you know, can be felt, you know? So I always, you know, I go into a conversation, look, me and him ain't, well, what reason we have to have problems or be enemies or whatever, there's of no benefit to either one of us or to the kids. So, you know, I'm not, you know, here to grandstand or anything like that. You know, my conversation with him at that time or whatever definitely wasn't that kind of energy or anything. Just trying to be sincere and as plain and direct as possible. You know, this is my intention, to provide them a secure and safe home that they can thrive and grow in. I don't want to impede in any way your ability to have a relationship with them or anything. I encourage it. I want it, you know, at all costs. Even if they get mad, sometimes I will let him know, you know, look, even when children get mad, sometimes that's what they're going to do, right? But I know a day will come, a time will come. Your children are going to want to be in your life. My father, I probably stopped seeing my father at all. Maybe like 4th or 5th grade was maybe like the last time I see him. Maybe like 9 years old or something like that, right? Like haven't seen him anything at all. And around senior year, like I think I was going into the Army because I went into the Army right after high school. And my mother shows up at the house and she lets me know, like, my father passed away, which, you know, and she's like, oh, you know, but nobody knew where he was, right? So she just happened to bump into some of his family, but lo and behold, he had just passed away maybe a month or two ago, right? And I had been kind of telling myself all along and putting up this show all my life, like, I don't care about him, you know, who is he or whatever, whatever. But in that moment, and even once I decided to go and connect with his family, like, they didn't have any pictures of him. My mother talked to me about him. Like, come to find out, he also was in the army. He also went to Korea. I went to Korea. So, you know, I began to have that longing, you know, from someone that I really never even knew, you know,
Right.
just hearing stories about him from his family and stuff, having that longing of really wanting to see where I come from and hear his story and how that whole thing unfolded. So I always figured, I always know, you know, regardless if the kids, you know, get mad at him or however they feel about him, I want to keep that open because I always believe that one day, you know, when you get the
And I
opportunity to be
and I
one.
and I think the kids, I mean, even though the kids, like I said, were 4 or 5, they had an understanding, and they're very smart children. They understood the difference between, we know who our biological father is, and we know who he is. And regardless of when we and Cash and I were dating, all the way up to currently now, even to present day, and they're adults, they would still, when they're both together, they would call their biological father Marcus, and then their their stepfather, Cash, and that's his name actually. A lot of people like, you don't call him Dad. Maybe once in a blue moon they will call him Dad. Maybe if they're really trying to ask for something. But it's
Right.
always been that level of respect. They don't want it to be a scenario of, you know, one person's feeling kind of out of the place or another person feeling out of the place. You know, even now, I'm going to send both of them Happy Father's Day. Even if they know, well, one may not be here for whatever reason, another person may be here all the time. And I can actually commend the kids to say they know that level of respect, and it will always be a thing. It's never been a thing of, because you hear some step kids just the stepkids will just completely say, that's Dad. My stepfather is Dad, and they
Right.
don't acknowledge anybody else. But no, they've always shown the same level of respect to both of them, you know, and they both, and both parents understood too, like, hey, you know, and I definitely commend the kids as well. I wanted to ask you, Cash, about discipline, because a lot of people, and this is a touchy subject, because it's like, I don't hit nobody's kids, but then some people are like, if I'm watching your kids, I'm hitting them, you know.
No, no, look, I come from a long line of whoopers, right? So, you know,
Wait, did you say whoopers?
yeah. You know, my mother, my grandmother, my uncles, you know, at any time you can catch a whooping from somebody for something, right? So that was just it. And, you know, even my own nieces and nephews, you know, for the longest, you know, I would beat them. I think but you know, I didn't have any problems disciplining the kids. I would say this. I mean, I never wanted it to be, because I had a stepfather at one point when I was very young, and it was a very crazy situation, right? And you can imagine, imagine like a toddler, right? And it's this strange grown person,
Right,
man.
right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
In your
scary.
house, you know, it can be absolutely terrifying. So I try to use a bit of empathy, you know, with regards to that, with the kids, and also common sense. I mean, you just don't go around, you know, plugging kids for no reason. But no, and the more I grew, I mean, earlier I probably, you know, disciplined them or whipped them a lot more. But definitely as I learned more, and then also as they got older, right? I don't think you should be beating kids into
Right.
12, 13, 14. Like, at that point, you understand English. Like, my 3-year-old, I might pop her on the hand or something, because we can't really sit and have a conversation. She just needs to be able to understand that, hey, you know, get away from that. But, you know, a middle school child, a teenager, you should be able to just tell them something or tell them to do something, and then it gets executed.
I just want to say for folks who, may be tuning in now or watch afterwards, when we're talking about whoopings and beatings, it's discipline. We're talking about discipline, not abuse. So I just want to make that clear.
Talking about a foot to the neck.
Right, because you never know what people chime in on. What we say within 25 minutes, but what they heard within 2 seconds of jumping on. So I just, again, discipline, not abuse.
Well, no, and not even, and disciplining can go from, not even that you actually touching the person. It could just be chastisement, or you took something away from them or whatever. But that's the question that I wanted to get into. Like, here you have a situation where a stepfather comes in, and let's just say their father or their mother bought them this new TV, and the kids are watching. Well, my mama bought me this TV. You ain't doing nothing. And then the new mama coming in. Well, let me show you what I'm fitting to do. And click, takes the remote and turns the TV off. It happens. So how does that step parent, truly able to discipline that child if you have that issue?
Did that light?
I turn the light on. Okay.
I see the light.
Yeah, I thought somebody.
I'm the pro. Well, and for me, this is like a subject I can't even really touch on, because my dad, even regardless of whatever happened within our household, periodically, my dad has always been there. We've never had another man come into our household and tell us anything. And even if he wasn't accessible immediately, he was always accessible. Our dad was always in our life. And even with my husband, sleep in peace, King. It was my husband. That's who I had a child with. That's, he was the one that, contributed to raising our son. And my son, he's never had another male like that to be in his life, unless it was friends and families, mentors and stuff like that, but not another man trying to tell him what to do or raise him. So it's like, I'm going to ask a lot of questions again, because I'm not used to that. That's a life that I've never had to live.
Do you?
No, yeah, it's a lot to kind of put together, but it takes some level-headed adults, right, to do that sort of thing. And as long as you're working with adults, if you're working with fools, I don't know what to tell you. There's no advice that's going to be able to help you on that.
Right. Again, because we know, let's be real. We know that there's stereotypes when it comes to Black fathers, right? That they're absent, they get up and leave, blah, blah, blah. We know what some of the stereotypes are. However, if we want to look at history and the way things are put in place, we also know that if the system didn't put our men in jail, and if they weren't murdered, maybe these same men would be in the homes with their kids to be able to raise them, support them, provide for them mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, etc. So it's a great thing that you, being a king, came in to raise someone else's children, which is not easy, again, and it could be hurtful for someone not to call you dad and to call you Cash. Those are your feelings, one person, but there's a lot of men out there that are absent, not because of the system and what we've been through. It's because they just really are absent. They have numerous kids and have not raised any of them. And all of them.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a few things that you touched on right there. The first being that all of this stuff that we've been talking about, relationships, parenting, fatherhood, all of these things don't exist in a bubble, right? These exist in the context of us being Black and living in America, and all of those things have an impact and weigh on this whole conversation as well. There actually was a recent study done by the CDC, though, which many people were surprised when it came out that Black men were leading in a few areas. So, say for instance, 70% of Black dads who live with their children actually do most of the day-to-day function. Well, said that every day they do those things, right? Bathing, taking to the potty, feeding, all of these different types of things. Whereas for whites, it was 60%, and for Latinos, it was 45%, right? So I think that Black men, we want to be fathers. We're human beings, right?
Right.
So that's just part of the stereotype, just part of the idea of making Black abnormal and subhuman, right? You know, we want to love our children. We want to live secure, happy, thriving lives, good family structures, raising our families, peacefully. Who doesn't?
Right.
But absolutely, there definitely was a huge interference in that. And I believe 100% that it was purposeful. I mean, if you look at around the turn of the century in 1910, right, in America, you start off with 100,000 inmates. So you fast forward 50 years to 1960, the number of those inmates grow to about 320,000. You go another 20 years just to put on another 200,000, bringing you to 500,000 total inmates, right? So the first time they increased by 200,000, it took 50 years. The next time, it took just 20 years. Now go from just 1980 to 1990, you go from 500,000 incarcerated to 1.1 million. So in 10 years, you now increase by 600,000. And then, if that's not enough, from 1990 to 2000, you go to about 2.1 million. So now you go from, in 20 years, it increased by 500,000 inmates to in 10 years, it increased by a whole million. So that's a lot of Black men who were just, taken off the board. If this is a competition, your, soldiers, your pieces, your pawns are just out of existence. They're just removed.
Question. So you have all these Black men that are locked up. Maybe they're not locked up. Maybe they're just not raising their kids for whatever reason. They got going on. With that being said, if someone wanted to change their life around right this minute, say, you know what, I know I got these kids out here. I'm going to make my commitment and just be there. Like you said, step one. How can you exemplify what a true father is if you didn't have that example? I talk to the young ladies sometimes, and we talk about motherhood, and in reference to that, we all have stories we could say about our families and experiences that we were brought up in, and the lifestyles, good or bad. But if we're talking about just the bad, you don't want to pass that down in the next generation. So for our Black men, our brothers out there, how can we say, hey, this is what it's like to be a father. This is what we show our kids. This is what we teach our young kings and queens. If we don't have that role model ourselves, are we just winging it just because we don't have, because of course, just in general and parenting, there is no manual blueprint. Okay, this is what you do, blah, 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 blah. But to add to that layer, you have a lot of single moms out there doing it on their own. Sometimes I hear a lot of men like, don't say Happy Father's Day to y'all. There's fathers out there. But at the end of the day, we're winging it. What would you say for you? You said, well, I didn't have a father. I did have a father, but he passed away. So, and then he was in and out the household at times. So what do you build upon to say, this is what I'm going to do to be that good example?
Well, I think there's plenty of examples if you're looking around, right? So I would go over to my friend's house. I had friends who had fathers, other people, you know, even if you say a TV show or whatever, right? It's really just a matter of right and wrong, right? We all know when it comes down to making certain decisions, because that's what happens, right? We get to the fork in the road, there's a decision to make, are you going to do the right thing or the wrong thing? And it's just a matter of making that choice, right? Parenting is a selfless act. It's really, you know, taking a lot out of yourself and putting it in and investing it into your children. You may not want to do it. You know, there's a lot of stuff, you know, as a parent, you may not feel like doing, especially in the moment. You know, I have a 3-year-old and, you know, she constantly wants to play toys. She constantly, you know, so there may be a time where maybe I don't want to play, but you know what? It's not about me, right? You know, I'm able to, you know, make that choice, make that decision that, you know, I'm going to put my child's happiness first. I'm going to put my child's happiness before mine. So, wherever you are at in your life, whatever you are doing, there's no wrong time to start doing the right thing, right? So we all can recognize what that right thing is. If you're in prison and you have children, write them a letter. That's you know, kind of you know, common sense and basic, right? Now I understand that there's things, you know, maybe on the father's side that may prevent them from doing that sort of thing. Sometimes there's a level of shame or, you know, different things, or, you know, they have a difficult relationship with the mother or whatever. But again, on all sides, father, mother, everybody, parenting, you know, is selfless. And sometimes, you know, your ego, your pride, what it is that you want, you know, all those things have to be put to the back burner. You can go through your whole life raising a child. I mean, you're a child, right? You're a biological child. Let's not even just talk about stepchildren, right? You can raise biological children and give them everything that you got. And, you know, it'd be a thankless position, you know. And unfortunately, if it happens like that, you know, that's what it is. But that's the job, right? So you just do what you can do, the best decisions that you can make at that time. Be there just so you can give them what they need.
So I mentioned that I wanted to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and of course go back to the good. But the ugly part, I wanted to touch
I've been waiting,
is about child support. It's such a touchy subject. You have some parents who are staunch advocates, like, I don't care if you about to die tomorrow, I want every penny that you owe me. I don't care about your hospital bill. You better tell the preacher to move over. Give me that watch on your wrist. And then you have scenario like myself. I do not have my baby father on child support. I know plenty of women that do not have their baby fathers on child support for many different reasons. And every reason is different. We won't go into it. But there are some reasons that you will hear, well, because I don't want to stir up any problems. You know, the guy could get kind of angry, or, oh, I know he's not working, or just whatever have you. So before we go into all the child support things, I just want to know if you could start it off with your opinion on child support.
Well, my opinion on child support, I think every mother who is not cohabitating and married to their child's father, really, maybe even if you're cohabitating and not married, you probably should still have him on child support, right? Because technically speaking, he can up and leave any day. So child support is really about the mother doing whatever it is that she can, again, on the behalf of her children. Can it be difficult for the mother at times? Some of the hoops they have you to jump through. Sometimes you get threats or whatever. But I think, you know, again, it's the mother's responsibility to procure as many resources as she can for her child. And if those resources, you know, are owed and due to that child, then you should absolutely pursue it.
I got something to say, but go ahead, Tom. Let you
wait, question. Okay, so it's the mom's responsibility to make sure all the resources are put in place. Is that what you said?
Ultimately, it's gonna fall on the mother, right? Now, sure, the father has
wait, because there's a difference. There's a difference between expectations and what may fall on. So what I'm gonna go back to my saying, what I thought I heard you saying was initially all that responsibility automatically falls upon the mom. That should automatically fall upon the mom. Is that what I'm like? And this is not a debate.
So hopefully this clarifies. I think it's the father's responsibility to pay child support, but ultimately that would be the mother's responsibility to file for child support. You know what I'm saying? Like, the father doesn't go down and file, put out a claim on his own self. What I'm saying is,
right.
It's just to,
Well, here's the kicker. So it's such a touchy subject for me because my own father, he suffered in that system. So let's put that to the side for a second. So I personally feel that if two people have a child together, regardless if it was an accident, willingly or however, both parties are responsible for that child. Now, granted, there's many things that happen down the road or whatever, and we could, every situation's different. But what would you say? I mean, I personally feel the whole system has to be revamped because I think that the system, not that it was tailored to women, but I think that the system was tailored to hurt Black men. I mean, by every means necessary. So even when that man is like, "Oh, I'm trying, I'm doing it," they're like, "I'm gonna suspend that driver's license. You ain't doing nothing." And you're like, "Oh man, now I'm going back into the system again." And then there's so many different stories. I could actually say, what about a scenario where, you are paying child support? You're like, "Hey, I love my kids, and here's the money, and I'm working my butt off," and you didn't even have to get public assistance involved or anything. You're doing it on your own. Like, here you go. But you come to find out when you pick up your little girl, your little son, well, where's his clothes? Wait, did you just go on a trip to Miami? What is this? Right. And the mother is taking it, doing her own thing. I mean, I know story after story on how brothers are trying to do what's right, and the mama just woohoo.
Which is something that Liz was saying. A lot of baby mama drama is also the result of women not having had their fathers in the home and not understanding or placing value in the position. That's hard on men that want to be fathers. Which to me goes along with what you're saying, like, because I also personally know a lot of men who strive to be great fathers, who are always there for the kids. It's outside of financial, means. They are literally, they're there mentally, emotionally, dance recitals.
But that's support in my eyes as well, Ty. Wow. That's support in my eyes as well, because right now, if you have, my father, may he rest in peace, he was in the system for a very, very long time. And I remember one of my last conversations was with him is, I'd rather give and this time I was in my 30s. He's like, you're in your 30s. I'd rather give you the money than to give it to the system. Because I guess how the system works is once there's a certain, once you go in arrears of owing back child support, now you're paying the system. So they're getting their piece and their pie too. And then that's when they're implementing, maybe you could get your driver's license.
It can definitely be punitive. So the idea of child support in and of itself is so that, the custodial parent will have that additional support from the non-custodial parent. Just because you aren't the primary child care provider doesn't mean that absolves you of any and all responsibility to the child.
Men sometimes think that. Like, men sometimes think that if they pay child support, that everything else doesn't matter. Going to teachers' conferences, going to doctor's appointments, just being there.
That's what I'm trying to say, that a lot of times when people think of the word support, you're thinking about financially. Okay, right. In his pockets, but support comes in those forms. Support is, because right now as a mother, I'm up and not to put you on blast, Cash, but Nia had a temperature a couple of days ago. You was there helping me, but as soon as she was laying down, you fell back to sleep. But I'm still up. I didn't get any sleep until 5 a.m. because I just got to make sure that she's moving. You know, I got to make sure she's breathing, you know, hitting her and touching her during her sleep. And this 24-hour being a mother, they don't understand sometimes, like, support is that too. Checking in. Like, I don't want your money. I want your time. Your time is so valuable. You know, I'd rather be there for the.
It goes back to choosing a mate, right? So, you know, unfortunately, some people wander into certain situations, but really the best advice I can give you, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. You know, be selective about, you know, who you have a child with. Be intentional about it.
Which is true. Like being selective, right? Here's so being selective. You're with someone, let's say there's no kids yet. You're with someone, they are like the perfect person up until the fact where now they are obligated. And I've noticed that too. People are like, well, they never acted like that before. They threw money around because they felt like it when they wanted to. But then when they became obligated to financially taking care of a child, they switched. We have Clyde McIntyre said all fathers should pay child support.
And look, here's how it's supposed to look, right? Here's how the government has meant for the system to be designed. Now, unfortunately, we get crushed under the weight of the government sometimes in their rules because they have designed rules for people with money, people with means, the people who are living above board, right? And we absolutely, you know, as a group are not doing those things. 70% of all Black households make less than $50,000 per year. I'm talking about as a household, not as an individual. And there's not much you can do as far as trying to raise children and all these things on, you know, 50,000 combined as a household. Yet 70% of all Black households are below that threshold. So, you know, what happens is they have meant for, okay, if you guys separate, if you guys get divorced, if you guys, you know, separate and you have a child, listen, we're going to look at your financials, how they would do it in Florida, the law here. We're going to look at both of you guys' financials, how much you have, how much you make. We're going to determine how much you should, you know, the child should be getting, you know, $1,000 a month, right? To care for them. We know the father makes this amount. We know the mother makes this amount, right? So they come up with a formula of, okay, the mother will say is kicking in this amount, and then the father, you know, you're supposed to kick in 60%, right? Because say you make 60% of the income, so we're going to have you pay 60% of that 1,000, right? So say it's $600 a month in that case. So you know, it's really means tested. So what they're meant for you to do is, okay, you have on paper a court order that you are going to pay this amount monthly to the custodial parent. And then we're going to also give you rights, right? We're going to give you visitation. We're going to give you, if me, myself, who, you know, some unfortunate reason, me and my wife would split, that's how it would go down. Right. I would pay child support monthly, and I will also have court-ordered visitation, court order, you know.
And that's important, but no, and that's important because a lot of times, and I hear this with parents, they got this verbal thing going on, and verbal contracts can be null and void at any time. But a court order,
I mean, you know what kind of person that you had a child with or whatever. But for women, I feel, you know, especially when it comes to the financial aspect, you have to do what you can do to protect yourself. If you feel like you want to go living on an agreement, or, you know, I feel like I need some, you know, the kid want to go to basketball camp, so now I got to go ask, you know, my you know, child's father or whatever for $100 for basketball camp. Why put yourself in that position where you have to go ask somebody for money? I couldn't imagine me as a grown man having to, you know, check in with somebody and ask for money every time I needed or whatever.
But
no,
that situation is so established.
So I have it whenever it is that I do need it.
But what I think about, like, okay, so let's go back to the system. The system, we know, what happens with the system and our men. So what I'm hearing is like you're encouraging putting the men back in that same system, because the same system that is corrupt is the same system that we're relying on to be credible to the fathers out there. And again, I speak freely and ignorantly, because I've never been through this situation. So I can say what I would do or wouldn't do because I haven't been there.
But before you answer that, Cash, real quick, it's so hard because literally, if everybody on this panel knew 10 people, 10 fathers, and they have significant others with children, each person has their own scenario that is the reason why I'm not going to put you on child. There's a reason why I have not put my baby father on child support. Now, that reason could be like, well, what's really going on? When I let people know that reason, they're like, oh man, that's messed up. I didn't look at it like that. Now the other people like, I don't care. Put that joker on child. I don't care. But for me, I'm doing it for the protection of my children. Now we could peel that layer back, and that's a whole nother conversation, but I'm doing specifically for my children's feelings. When I see women, but here's the thing, I see women that the system has to be fixed, because I see women taking abuse and they're manipulating the system. If the man is on his last and he gives $100 of his last money to that child, that money should go to that child. It should not go for you to play numbers. It should not go for you to get your hair cut.
Okay, so you're saying this in regards to the women, where the men are paying their child support, but the women that are getting the money are not using it for the correct. Right. They're getting their hair done, their nails done.
Well, then that would make the man. But then it gets frustrating for the man, because maybe the man is like, well, what in the world is this? You know what? I'm not paying anymore. Now he's in a jam himself. But then once again, you do have women who like, I need the money. You had this kid with me. And the only way you could get that father to act right is to put him on child support. I mean, it's such a terrible scenario.
Ooh, wait a minute. We have a Mark Logan that just said men who take care of their kids should still be told to pay child support. Or is that a question?
It has a question mark on it. I would say that look, if you're taking care of your children, if you're a custodial parent, if you have some sort of joint care agreement or whatever, people do work outside deals, right?
Right.
You do have some non-custodial fathers who maybe you send the child over to me for 6 months out the year, and versus me paying child support, right? So there's a few different ways that
right
this can be done, considering the fact of like I said again, us as Black people not having all of these assets and income or whatever. So sometimes we do have to figure out different things. But our struggle, our fight, what it is that we want, what perfect looks like, is that we're full-fledged citizens, we're above board, we're operating as designed, as all the other citizens in America are doing, right? The other citizens in America are cashing their check at a bank, right? So why should we be cashing checks at the corner store? At some point, our fight is to, get on board, and not be living beneath, the thresholds and all this, because you're going to run into those problems. You know?
So are you saying right now, and this is to piggyback off what you said, Ty, so we know that the system is not made for you and I. We also know that if you mess up in them rears and you get, that man on your back, you may be doing some time. Don't let you have some previous charges that you're trying to, put to the side and make a good life, because now you're doing some real time. That's happened to my
Yeah,
father
I would
numerous times.
just give you a quick agree on that. Some of the penalties is a bit archaic, is a bit counterproductive. Like I said, we try to get people above board, right? You pushing a person back down, you know what I'm saying, to where maybe they end up now having to do crime or sell loose cigarettes and get choked out. Now you're living like off the grid, right?
Right.
So we want, our people to advance and to be living, fully productive like everyone else.
Liz.
Yeah, great point.
Some women weaponize child support too. That is that.
And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because, like I said, I am a product of a father not being in my life because he's been in and out of the system. But when he was in the system, it was a scenario of he's getting jammed left and right. And I'm like, why should I? First of all, I don't even understand why any man is paying child support, and I'm in my 30s. Like, I'm not getting, I mean, is this going to a fund, an imaginary fund that I don't see about? Like, I don't understand why any adult is receiving child support on behalf of somebody. Like, that is just mind boggling.
Well, I would say this: if a mother, say a mother has raised a child, right, to 18, I don't think that a father should be able to say, like, well, okay, well, the clock ran out, right? That child is
right.
I'm not, I don't have any problem per se with a mother getting some sort of, recompense for having
it doesn't leave them exempt. Yeah, I actually agree.
Again, because of our income and our wealth, positioning in America, when the states, so what the states decided to do is that, look, if you have a child and you are not paying child support, and we are providing public assistance for that child, right? State funds for that child, right? We are going to come after you to recoup those funds. So you are ending up with men with $30,000, $40,000 child support bill from the state because, depending upon how long that mother was on public assistance, that bill could be pretty hefty, right? And so the state is going to come. Now you're going to come after someone who likely doesn't have any money whatsoever, right? We just went over the numbers. We just said 70% of all our households make less than 50. I mean, it's grim. It's like 25% make less than 15,000 a year as a household.
You want to know what? There are a lot of relationships and a lot of families and a lot of men. I'm gonna bring it back real quick for the Father's Day special. There are a lot of men out there that, regardless of that situation, are still present every single day in every single way they can be. I'm sure that you didn't start, and I don't know what your income is, Cash, but I'm sure that regardless of what your income was and what it is now, that never deterred you from continuing to support kids that were yours and that were not yours. And again, this is what brings us to where we're at today, highlighting those dads. You didn't run, you didn't crumble, you didn't hide your money. You were there, you were present, you were ready to say, okay, even though I may not be their biological father, I am still here as a person raising these kids, and I am a man who wants to be able to communicate with that father so we could be on the same page.
And to add to that, I think I say this to you all the time, Cash. I always say thank you because the kids never had to have the experience of saying, hey, I don't know what it's like to have a father. There's a lot of their friends, they may go through, oh, my mom's a single parent. They only have one parent in the house. While them, they have three. They have their biological whenever he comes in and out. Then they have you, then they have me. And it's like, wow, I got all this, support in different directions. And they never had to understand what that lifestyle was because that's a whole nother entity within itself. Right. But no, when a person such as yourself and all the other fathers out there who take that stance and say, you know what, I know this is not my job. I just meeting you, and hello, and they're getting to know your flaws and vice versa. definitely, my hands are applauding to you. Definitely you're a great example of what a father looks like. And for the fathers who never had to go through that and they just stayed, like you said in the very beginning of your conversation, the very first thing is just being present.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may just have, empty pockets and the coins are falling to the ground and you have no money, but just your presence alone is worth wonders for children,
And I just want to make 2 quick points before we get out of here.
Look who's making the hard stop. He done ran the show.
Well, the first thing is that, making that decision to become a father, to marry my wife, to settle down and, evolve into a man, it's done more for me than, me doing something for anybody else, right? Because it gave me focus, it gave me direction, it gave me purpose. Got me out of running the streets and things like that, where only bad things happen and stuff like that. So it certainly wasn't any big sacrifice on my part, right? It was a blessing and something that has truly helped me to get to where I currently am today. I think my oldest brother Daniel is on here, and I speaking of being in a thankless position, right? So when I was young, I was raised in a group home for a good period of time, for about 3 or 4 years. And my brother, who went off and joined the military, he may have been 17. I think he got his GED and joined the military. And then he came and got me and my other brother from out of the group home. And, he gave me a stable place to live and learn, at least, for 4 years from my high school years, where I can myself, just gave me an opportunity, so fathers, that's one thing that we can do, is give these kids an opportunity to do something great. And so thank you, Daniel, for what you did in my life. Happy Father's Day.
It's a family affair.
For all the fathers out there, definitely, you guys do not get enough credit and love. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all that you do. I know it's hard. It's interesting because, like I said in the beginning, I was sick for all these days. And I knew Father's Day was today, and I was like, I'm gonna make him some breakfast somehow, some way. I put my little mask on my face. We was chopping onions and all that stuff, just trying to get it together. But no, definitely, thank you guys. There needs to be some other holidays or just more recognition, during the whole year. Thank you so much.
I did same for me. Thank you again, Cash. Thank you so much. Number one,
thanks for having me.
God, him and his, he got his, that was it, his 15, right? And then
he was the 15 minutes.
But no, Cash, again, thank you for being our Unfiltered Dad guest speaker. And thank you for being a positive Black man in those kids' life. Okay? Thank you for that. Biologically and not. The rest of the dads, happy Father's Day. Again, my dad, Edward Valentine.
Giving me a hard time the whole time. I've been seeing y'all messages. Happy Father's Day, Bruce.
Shout out Kia.
You want any more shout outs? I want to shout out my homie Alistair. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you guys again. If you could just go to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mothers Unfiltered. We will be back next Sunday, same time, same place.
Yes. Thank you.
Hit that like button.
Hit that like button. Yes.